Welcome back to this second video in our Continual Improvement Awareness video series. And what we're going to talk about is learning to work together in connected processes. And we're going to expand upon what we had learned about in terms of the nature of work and continual improvement a little bit, and talk about what does this mean in terms of learning. Now, learning begins with mindfulness. Action without thought is mindlessness, and thought without action is hypocritical. So if we do things without thinking, it means we're not paying attention. We're not being mindful. We're not, actually paying the proper respect to the things that we do, and we're wasting our time perhaps. Thought without action is hypocritical. And that means that we have an idea, but we don't do anything about it. And so what we need to do is to do something. So mindlessness is an inactive state of the mind characterized by reliance on distinctions that we have from the past. I keep doing things that I've always done. I'm dogmatic. So mindless people are trapped in a rigid perspective. They're insensitive to ways that it can improve their quality of work. Mindless people believe they already are the best and that any future change is pointless or meaningless, as they have already achieved performance that satisfies themselves. They lack attention on the focus of their work. So mindlessness creates a mess. It's also very self-centered because it's not considering the needs of others or who you are delivering value to. And so when we are mindful, we recognize the way in which we construct our world is only one possible construction of many. We might consider reconstructing this world or ourselves so it does not fit our abilities, or whenever it doesn't fit our abilities, or our perceived lack of abilities, whenever we feel stunted or less than fully effective. So the widespread failure to recognize the insights can be found in different perspectives, from diversity, from understanding different points of view or different customer segments, may actually constitute a disability. We do not have the ability to see things as we need to. So how do we know if we don't ask? What should we ask if we are certain we know? Why should we ask? All answers come out of questions. If we pay attention to our questions, we increase the power of our mindful learning. I remember Albert Einstein once said, if only I had the right question, if only I had the right question. Finding a solution is more about having the right question than it is about finding the answer. So what do we have to do? Well, leadership actually has a very strong role in this. So it encourages process responsibility. The job of the leader, according to Yoshio Kondo, is stimulating people's desire to work. That's what motivation is. And he says, when talking about responsibility, we mean the strong feeling that one must somehow or other achieve the objectives of the job that they've been given. It's provided the aims of work have been clearly explained, providing people's sense of responsibility will increase in proportion to the freedom they're allowed in the means, choosing what they're going to do, and the methods, the techniques that they apply by which they can achieve those aims. Give people the goal, let them go, and then let them do that. Kondo said, those in positions of authority should consider, in connection with human motivation, teamwork and employee participation and leadership that fosters this. So the more people we have coming together, the more ideas we have, the more diversity we have, the more thinking together, the more creative stimulation. And Kondo had a model, which he shares here, and he says each individual contributes to the value of the process. And so we see this box labeled self-control, and it has a box above it called the improvement of job design. This is a design of standard work. In the Toyota production system, that was originally called training within industries, something that was taught in the 1954 to 1956 period. In the bottom comes guidance and encouragement from the supervisor. This is the role of the leader to drive motivation in the system. Understanding of humanity is this sensitivity of the organization to what it means to be human in the work situation. And then comes that green box that says self-control. And when I take a look at this, the Japanese word is called Jisu Kanri. It's the ability to manage yourself. At Nokia mobile phones, this was called regulated self-management, self-regulation of the way you work. So we control it, and this is a leverage point. Once we start taking that responsibility, then we improve our ability. We participate in the organization because we realize that the best way to improve our ability is through experience. As we participate with others, we start gaining a keen interest in what they're doing, and that then starts forming, if you will, teams or teamwork with those who work before us, giving us their work products, those who accept our work products afterwards. And this builds what the Japanese call Jisuiken. And Jisuiken is, literally it means a second set of eyes, but it means this ability to work together. So in Japan, leadership enables followership. It is the driver, if you will, of the motivation. It creates enthusiasm, which then drives the motivations of the workers. Now, the Japanese created a methodology for this in 1996 with a term called Ji-Kotai Kanketsu. And it's combining three Japanese words: Ji, which means the self, Kotai, which means process, and Kanketsu, which means completion. So it actually means together built-in quality with ownership. So people working together build the quality into their products and services by taking ownership for what they're doing. It's defined and continuously refining optimal work processes. So it's combining responsibility management with process ownership by the workers. But it applies also to the supervisors who are owning the flow. The workers own the action. It's also applying to the management who owns the resources. And so we see each has a different level of responsibility and a different type of ownership, but it's executed at all three levels. So it's engaging workers in this dual responsibility of doing work according to standards and seeking continual improvement to refine their routine work processes. Now, there are 4 key steps in JKK to create optimal work processes. The first is breaking down a process into work elements, categorizing. Some people will call this stratification or dividing it into rational subgroups. Second is identifying the necessary conditions for each work element, and that's operationally defining what is this process, what are the inputs, what are the outputs, what are the conditions under which we can transform inputs into outputs that meet our requirements. It's establishing the work process flow. What are those elements of flow? What is the sequence in which things have to go? And then it's creating that out of this package, standard work. So one of the things we have to do as management is to assess how mature are we in our processes. And to get this overall viewpoint is very difficult. So there is a very simplistic way of taking a look at this based on the characteristics of what it takes to make standard work. So 3 things is process thinking and process action. The second is we have to have a measurement system that tells us, are we actually doing those things that are necessary? And the third is connectivity in the flows between the work processes as well as the business processes. And finally, we have to have the vision and strategic system-wide integration so that it all goes to accomplish a common end. And what we see here in this chart is levels 1 through 7 create the daily management system. The process foundation is the first 4 levels. We identify, we have processes. We've mapped them informally. They're managed by functional managers. That's the way most organizations are managed. And then we make a step forward when we assign a process owner to a cross-functional process. That means we're moving outside of our zone of comfort, if you will, to work in an area that is not familiar to us. And we have to understand then and learn, how does the flow work there? What are they contributing? How is value produced? Next, we have to map those processes formally. Why? We need a common language. If we're going outside of our comfort zone, we need to understand what's the language of those processes? What are the flows? What's the content of them? And then we have to measure them so we can say how well we're doing and how well could we be doing and understand where is waste being produced. And then work processes need to be linked to business processes because that's where we actually retrieve the value or capture the value from customers. And that's where we can see how much value has been lost. So level 7 is the level where we've completed a daily management system. So for most organizations, getting to level 7 is a major step forward in creating the foundation for more solid strategic thinking and strategic action plans. And then we can move forward to taking a look at how far out does the management team actually make plans for strategic change to the organization. So are we just chartering them for this year? That's level 8. Are we aligning them to strategy so that they're in a 3 to 5 year program? Or are we identifying in our strategic plan the sequence and cadence by which we will do major change management and transformation management projects in the future? So our best learning comes from process failures. If we take a look at the right-hand side in the red box here, we see process action. So here we see mistakes, flaws, faults, and failures are all going into process actions. We see them in the results. The results of our processes are telling us what's right and what's wrong. So we have to examine that. That's what Gemba 1 decisions. And we see that we have is going to be the first of 3 learning loops. So this single loop learning is asking, are we doing things right? Did we get the process right? Are we losing value in the process? And we take action on it. This is about the tasks we do. This is process learning. The second level loop is double loop learning, is are we doing the right things? Have we got our priorities right? Are we doing the changes that we need to do for the process? These are asking about those continual improvement projects in the PDCA process. So are we making the right changes that we have to deal with? Are we bringing the right tools or right competence skills into the organization? And this is about the process content. And it's business learning because we're asking ourselves, do we get the business results that we expect to from the design of the process organization that we put together? The triple loop learning is asking a very different question. It's how do we decide what is right? And these are the Gemba 3 decisions. This is cultural learning. This is about trying to understand what does it take for us to achieve the long-term vision. And the long-term vision is where do we want to be in 5, 10 years? And how will we then apply our resources and collectively work together to achieve that particular state for the organization? Now, we see that we go through the change process as a series of cycles of change. And basically, we're rotating through this daily management process several times in that series of 7 steps that we saw in the maturity grid. The first time we're going from level 1 to level 2, we're basically just understanding what is process. As we go up to level 4, we're documenting the process, first informally, then formally. As we start going through levels 5, 6, we're starting to simplify the process because we have measures for it. And when we start getting to level 7 and above, we can work on optimization of the process. And now we're changing from the SDCA to the PDCA process. We can have targeted change projects that are operating systemically. Now, the question is, what does it take for the people operating in this process? Do we want to be an insightful person? What do we have to do to create and maintain a quality mindset that focuses us on doing the right things and avoiding the bad things? So first, we have to seek to understand what are necessary as the outputs. What is the customer actually looking for? And how do we actually deliver that to them? Then we have to clarify, well, what are the specific requirements then for inputs to achieve those outputs? We have to identify the process flow of the required work activities to convert inputs into outputs. And that at each step in the process, the people have to accept ownership and accountability for making those conversions happen. We have to manage the result for work at each of those steps, exercising self-control, and then we have to practice a constructive review of the work to reveal what are opportunities for improvement that exist in this system. And then we have to aid others in this teamwork function in improving the contribution of their work, that's this Jesuican. and then improve the quality of work content and process constantly. It's a never-ending engagement process. So achieving group harmony is indeed the result. And the word Hansei refers to mental acts that lead to increased self-awareness because we have self-reflection. We think about what we're doing. We reconsider. We have introspection, mediation. We have contemplation. So we'll meditate on what's happening. And Hansei occurs in the check step, either in the PDCA or the SDCA. I say it standardizes worrying. So it's providing this Zen attitude for lean management. And it really has several features. There must be recognition of a problem which is primarily related to the personal performance of an individual rather than the failure of a process or an overall system. So when we're looking at a work, the question is the issue coming from the person doing the work, or is it coming from the process or the products, the parts, if you will, that are actually being put together? So the person creating a problem must accept personal responsibility for their shortcoming. And being reprimanded or scolded by management is not Hansei. It's about the act of the person who made the mistake. And so taking personal ownership for the mistake is a critical part of this Hansei reflection. And it's the individual acceptance that this act was done wrongly and the commitment, because there's a sense of shame or loss of pride in their work for not having done it. And then there's an obligation to do the work properly in the future. And this is self-generated, if you will. It's not generated by being told what to do or being yelled at for what you've done wrong. That people realize, I made a mistake, I don't want to make that mistake ever again. The starting point for all of this is to know yourself. And it's creating what's called a Sanao mind. And what we see is it's an open mind. It means I'm tolerant without selfishness. I'm open to the teaching of others. I'm willing to learn from the people on both sides of me about how to do my job better because it might help them do their jobs better, and together the system improves. It's a state of mind that leads to truth. And when you have this open mind, your thinking will clarify, and you can start understanding what's the best way or the right way to do things. And it's a way of mental self-control that allows us to fulfill or attain full competency in what we're doing, how we think and act. But you have to want it. If you openly listen to the teaching of others and think and strive for it again and again, you will achieve that state of mind. And that means having a diversity of opinions, listening to what others have to say, judging them based on the facts and the truthfulness of what they have to say, and then trying to apply it yourself and understanding, does this actually demonstrate itself as the outcome of the work that we are doing? So again, thank you very much for this session. We'll come back in our third video in just a little bit.